So, growing as a leader. They're going to be walking around, going ahead and getting your order. Don't worry about that. That's not going to bother me, and you eating won't bother me at all as well. I'm excited to be here. So today we're going to be talking about this idea of growing as a leader. And for me, this is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about talking to other leaders. Now, in order for me to truly gauge the room, I kind of need to know kind of who I'm talking to. Is that fair? So here's what I need to know. Raise your hand if you are the business owner. Raise your hand. Okay? All right, hands down. Okay. Raise your hand if you are an employee or salesperson for your employer. Okay, excellent. Great. That really helps me. That really helps me. Thank you for that. Because now that helps me understand how to really, pull out what we need to pull out from this idea of growing as a leader, right? And so now that I know my audience, I want to tell you a little bit about, myself, and I'm going to go into more depth with this in a minute. But again, Tomas Martinez, my wife and I own Luxury Home Magazine. Does anybody know what Luxury Home Magazine is? It's a real estate publication. It's a really large, oversized. We started that in 2011. I'll tell you more about that later. We also own Spanish Grove Academy. It is a Spanish immersion pre-K in San Antonio. It was one of the first on the north side on Wilderness Oak. If you've ever driven down Wilderness Oak, it's that really big, beautiful white building. We bought that in 2015. And I was a teacher. I had my master's degree in education. And I said, babe, good luck running the school. You can take this. You can do it. And so that tells you a little bit about me, and I'll go into more details later on that. But the first thing I want to start with is this quote. Leadership is a choice you make, not a place you sit. Now, whenever I teach adults, because you remember I was a teacher. Did he say that? I taught elementary, right? I taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Any teachers? Former teachers? Okay. So when you teach adults, I need the same kind of participation as you do kids, because otherwise, what do? We can kind of like tune out. It's easy, right? So my thought to you is this. Why is leadership a choice and not a place you sit? Who wants to tackle that one? Any thoughts?
Lead by example.
Lead by example.
Leader gets involved.
A leader gets involved, right? Do you see that? That's really good that you saw that. Do you see the difference between those two? A leader makes the choice, and it's not just someone just sitting down going, well, I'm the leader. You gave me the title, right? Now, has anybody ever been in a situation where someone was given the leadership role, and you're like, somebody's going through that right now. Right now, they're going through that. Everybody through. All right, so we can all have been in that space where we've worked places, right, where we were in situations where people were put in roles, but that was not really, they were just, a place they sat. They really weren't a leader. Now, the great thing is that everybody in this room, guess what? You're a leader. If you are in this room, you're a leader. Now, why can I say that? Why is that true? Why is everybody in here a leader? You made a choice to be here. I love that. You said, you know what? I'm going to pay the money. I'm going to show up. I'm going to take time out of my schedule. You're here. That's one big reason, right? What else? Why are you a leader? You want to better yourself, right? A great thing about leaders is they want to make themselves better. They don't want to just stay status quo. They want to keep building. Now, the other piece to this that I think is what John talks about, and John has a definition of leadership. Does anybody know John's definition of leadership?
It has something to do with influence.
Yes. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. If you truly want to be a leader, you need to have influence. Now think about everybody, raise your hand if you have kids. Anybody have kids? Okay, a lot of you have kids. All right, now I want you to just think back to your kids and think about the last time you negotiated with them. Right? Someone said every morning. Right? Here's the thing. Your kids are little leaders. They're influencing you. Right? They're helping you make decisions that you would have never made before. And they're constantly trying to figure out that way to negotiate, right? They're influencing your decision making. They're little leaders. And so even kids, if you walk in at Spanish Grove Academy and you walked in our school and you walked into the 18-month-old, can you start to see who's leading already at 18 months? Right? They're usually the kids taking the blocks from the other kids, right? And they're just going over here. Or I don't know if you've had little ones, you know about the biting that goes on in pre-K and in those early ages, right? Yeah, we have a few biters right now we're working through that situation. But here's the thing. Everybody in here is a leader, and because you have the ability to influence someone. Now, with that said, so now what? We know we're leaders. We know that we need to help other people around us. And there's a great book that I want to recommend because a majority of you are in that, you're in that role where maybe you're not the owner of the business, but you're an employee of the business. And then if you're the owner of the business, you need to read this book too. It's called The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell. Has anybody heard of that book? Right? Because here's what happens. Now the so what is, if you're the leader, I need you to understand something. You can have influence from the middle. Now think about what I just said there. Even though you're not the boss, even though you're not the guy that makes all the decisions or the gal that makes all the decisions, when you're in the middle, you can affect change. Why? Because you're a leader. You're here, you want to grow, you want to better yourself. You can make change from the middle. And the reason, does anybody know why they call it the 360-degree leader? Does anybody know that? Why they call it that way? Why John sets that up? It's really cool. Because John says that when you're in the middle, you can lead up. Right? Isn't that true? And then John says, but when you're in the middle, you can also what? Lead down. But when you're in the middle, you can also what? Lead out. You can do this, your peers, those people right next to you. That's a 360-degree leader. Now, how does that affect leaders when you're the boss? Right? Because even though you're the boss, let me just tell you, I run Luxury Realm Magazine, but I have a boss. Y'all know who my boss is, right? Yeah, who said that? Who what did y'all say? My wife is my boss, okay? Like literally. Anybody guess how long we've been married? Guess. 10, 25. Well, that was pretty good. 20 years in December, we've been married, right? I figured it out after about year 18. It was 18, I'm pretty sure. I figured out, no, it was way before that. But here's the thing.
On a Tuesday.
Yeah, that's right. But here's the thing, it's like when you're in leadership and you're the top, that doesn't mean you still can't lead up. That doesn't mean you still don't have people that you can affect. Because there may be other leaders around you that you can influence. There are other business owners that you can influence. And then, of course, as a leader, you're going to have to lead down. And that kind of leads me into what I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I need you to understand that if I were to say how many roles does a leader have, we would all say what? Is it more than 5? Yeah. All right, we all know that, right? But I just want to talk about 5 roles that leaders have, okay? And then I'm going to kind of tailor this into my story about my business and what happened to me. Because I really feel like whenever a business owner talks, if they don't share from their experience and what they went through, it's hard to relate, right? It's hard to make that connection. So I want to share that. But first, I want to do this, and then we're going to have an activity. Does everybody have a pen? You're going to need a pen in just a second. All right, great. See, the Helotes chamber is ready. You see this, Gabe? They're ready. They got paper, pens. I love this, Glenn. Thank you. And Rachel, is that right? Did I say that right? Thank you for making that happen. So now, 5 roles as a leader. Here's what I had to learn when I started my business, that there were roles that I needed to fill rather quickly. Now, these are in no particular order, and that's really important because you're going to have an activity to do, okay? No particular order. First role, what is that? The motivator. Now, when you think of a motivator, what comes to mind? What picture comes to mind? Cheerleader, right? What else? A speaker, right? The motivator that's the person, the guy or gal that comes in the office whistling, right? They're just too happy. They're happy about everything, right? And sometimes, as you know, when the motivator walks in, it's like, really, you're happy today too? Like, come on. But the motivator is a role that leaders need to play. Now, even if you're the boss, right, and even if you're in the middle, do you sometimes need to take this role? Okay, I'm glad we're on that same page. Number 2, the mentor, right? The mentor. Has anybody here ever had a great mentor? Raise your hand if you've had a great mentor. Okay? Put your hands out. Raise your hand if you'd love to have a mentor. You want one. All right? Yeah, good. Okay. I think we would all want one, right? And a mentor is that person that kind of walks alongside you and says, hey, let me just tell you from experience what I've been through. Okay? Now, in your business, have you had to be a mentor to someone? You've had to kind of walk them through the steps? Anybody here ever wait tables? I was a waiter. I loved it. Wasn't it the best job ever? Our waiters said they're doing a great job. It's like the best job ever. I loved my job as a waiter, right? But the thing is that there were times where I had to do the training. I worked at gyms on Blanco in 1604. That was my gyms. I opened it when I was in college. And I absolutely loved that job. I loved it. But I had to be a mentor, communicator. Ooh. Anybody here have good communication on your team? Anybody here have bad communication on your team? Yes. It's funny, that was a little bit more like, yes, like we got bad communication. So as a leader sometimes, you're going to have to be a communicator. You're going to have to be a communicator. And I would say, is this sometimes? All the time. You're going to have to be a really, really good communicator. And I found that out the hard way because you remember who my boss is, right? Y'all remember. I've found out the hard way. Then you're going to need to shift gears and you're going to need to be the learner, right? You're going to need to be the learner. And that's what you're doing right now. Learning is a big part of growing as a leader. And in the last one, I love this one. This is the navigator. Now, what do you think this role is as a leader? The navigator. What is this role? Strategic direction. Strategic direction. Yes. Anybody else want to add to that? If you're the navigator, you kind of got to know what? Where are you going? What's the next steps? What are we going to do now? We just did this. Now what? So as the leader, you almost have to have the vision out in front of where everybody else is at. Now, can you have that even in the middle? If you're in the middle of your company, can you have a little bit of that navigator inside you? I hope so. Trust me, I'm the leader of my company, and I want visionary navigators to walk alongside me sometimes and say, hey, have you thought about this, Tomas? Have you thought about this idea? And the good thing is I've got good people like Gabe and Elise on my team that help me with that. So these are the 5 roles. Now, here's what I need you to do. I'm just curious. You can go, like everybody's got a team. So look at the person across from you. That's going to be your team member, okay? And then we have a couple, y'all right there, John. Y'all work together right here, right? The people right across, just go back and forth, back and forth. But here's what I want you to do. You're only going to get 2 minutes for this drill. You ready? I want you to put them in order in what you think is most important, right, to least important. What's the most important role to the least important in your mind? And then tell your partner. Go. Okay, if I can get everybody's attention. So now you've worked with your partner. Now here's where the real debate begins. Here's where the real debate begins, right? Did anybody have any disagreements on what number 1 was? Any disagreements? Really? Nobody disagreed. I love that. Okay, I'm going to be really curious to see what your answers are. All right? So what I'd like you to do now is just who would like to go first and share your top 2? Who would like to go first? Just raise your hand and let me know. Who wants to go first? Okay, go. What do you have? Communicator and motivator. Raise your hand if you had those two in order. Look around the room if you had those in that order. Communicator, motivator. Okay, awesome. All right, next. Who wants to go next? What do you got?
We had navigator, and then we had communicator.
Navigator, communicator. Raise your hand if you had navigator, communicator. Oh, look. We got some more over here that had that. Cool. Navigator, communicator. Now, what do you notice? What do you already notice? What are you hearing? We hear communicator multiple times. Keep going. Give me another one. What do y'all have?
Motivator first, communicator second.
Motivator, communicator. Okay. Who else had that? Y'all had that one? Okay. You had that one too? Nice. What'd you have?
Communicator, then navigator.
Oh, look at that. Communicator, then navigator. I love that. Did anybody else have that? Communicator and navigator. Look at that. You had a couple back here that had that too. Communicator.
They're
Did he?
very successful.
All right. Anybody else have something similar to that, or something completely different than what we've heard? Anybody want to share? They have something different. Yes, please. Communicator and learner. I love that. I love it. Now, here's the thing. This is what I want to share with you, is that this order really depends on what? What's going to determine the order of these items? It's going to come down to what?
Where you are in the organization.
Where you are in the organization? Yes. And what else? It depends on the team, right? It could also depend on your strengths and weaknesses. Now think about that for a second. Let's say communication is not your forte, right? You're like, oh, I'm not that good at that, right? Do you want to put it at the top? You're like, oh, we'll kind of put that one down a little bit, right? Because we feel like I'm not good at that, right? We may feel like we're not that good at that. And so what I like about this activity is it gets your brain going, because I want you to imagine doing this with your team. I want you to take this back to your team and see what they say as they put it in order. Because what you may find is they may be telling you what they need. Listen to what I just said. They might be telling you what they need. Because if they think communication is number one, but you're like, well, isn't navigator number one? But in their mind, they're like, well, we think communication, that's probably going to be more important. Then you're going to have to start digging deeper. Like, why? Do you feel like we're not communicating well? So, great exercise to do with your team. But now I got to share my story with you, okay? Because this is, for me, my story is a lot like a lot of entrepreneurs, okay? So, I had no business experience. I need you to understand this. I taught for 11 years. I had never run a company. I had never sold anything. And I bought a franchise. Luxury Home Magazine is a franchise. I dove headfirst, wrote a check for a lot of money. Some of you have franchises. You know what I'm talking about. And then I was like, what the heck do I do now? Right? Zero experience. You got to remember, I was a happy teacher. I loved teaching. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade? Are you kidding? They thought I was the coolest person on the planet. I mean, literally. It was like I was performing all day. You know, I even had a whole thing that I would do for the, what do they call it, the talent show. I would even perform for them at the talent show, okay? But here's the deal. My story is a lot like a lot of other entrepreneurs. You see, in 2011, we began Luxury Home Magazine, and I was a one-man band. Does anybody know what I mean by that? What do I mean by that? I was everything. Did we even have an office outside of the home? Nope. We were officing right out of our home. We had graphic designers that would come and work out of our house with us. And we did that for almost 3 years. Overwhelmed is not the right word. I'll tell you how I felt. I felt alone. I felt like I was on an island. And I completely felt trapped. Does anybody relate to those terms when you're running a business? Feeling alone, Feeling like you're on an island, feeling like you're trapped. Now, could this happen when you're in the middle of a company as well? Absolutely. Maybe you feel like there's no movement to where you could be or where you want to go. And so for me, this was a really hard spot for me to be in because, I'm a pretty happy person. Like everything is rainbows and unicorns in Tomas's world. But this entrepreneur stuff was hard. Every day it was hard. And it felt like, I kept saying like to my wife, like, isn't it supposed to get easier? And she would just say, well, just, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. A year later, my wife was able to come on board. We started making enough money where she could come on board. Because remember, I told you, who's the boss? Mama is the boss. My wife is the boss. And then I was introduced to something that was a game changer for me. Has anybody ever had a book come into your life or a mentor come into your life that kind of starts to change things rather quickly? To where, number one, you started to feel like you weren't alone. Well, I had a book come into my life called The E-Myth. Has anybody ever read or heard of The E-Myth? Okay, listen to me. If you ever want to run a business or if you are the owner of a business, this book is a must read. And The E-Myth is basically about the entrepreneurial myth. And this book really kind of revolutionized and helped people understand what it meant to run a business. What does that truly mean? So my brother-in-law gave me this book. I was in Chicago, and we were up there on a trip, and, Enzo got to see snow for the first time. I have a 10-year-old son. He got to see snow, and he handed me this book, and he said, oh, man, you're going to like this book. It's all about running a business. And I have to tell you, that book, literally, I read it the first 100 pages on the plane, and I remember sitting on the plane looking at my wife going, oh my gosh, we have work to do. We have so much work to do. But now, do you think I was worried about the amount of work, or was I excited about the work ahead? See, I was excited because I started to see a blueprint. Now, when you have franchises, and I know some of you have a franchise in here, when you have a franchise, they kind of lay out the blueprint. You have somebody to call. They'll talk you through a lot of stuff, but there's some in and out mindset stuff, belief stuff that sometimes it's hard for them to relate to and to talk you through, or that you're willing to share sometimes, because depending on the relationship. So this book revolutionized my life. And then I was in when you're in the midst of the business, and this is the one thing that the E-Myth points out, is that what starts to happen is that you concentrate on being in the business instead of working on the business. And you get so entrenched with being in it that you never spend time working on it. And there's a big difference between the two. And that book started to open my eyes to that. And then the next phase, because when you start a business and when you're married and you're running a business together, let's just say there's tension. It's just a little bit of tension. I may be talking to some people over here. I don't know. But there may never had any tension. Amen. There you go. God is blessing them. Piece of cake. God is blessing them big time. But here's the thing. There was this tension because here's the thing. I had done it. I was a one-man band for so long, right? Well, a year. But in my mind, it's like I had done everything and I knew how to do everything. And you don't do it the way I did it. And I wanted to micromanage. I wanted to hover and be like, did you get this done? Did you get this done? And she would be looking at him like, aren't you supposed to be doing something? Like, let me do what I'm supposed to do, right? So then here's what happened. We got a coach. Anybody here ever hired a coach? Y'all know what I mean by that? Like a business coach that kind of steps in. This gentleman saved us from killing each other. Let me just tell you that right now. Sydney was the best thing that ever happened to us because he stepped in and he started helping us understand, hey, Tomas, here's what you're good at. Leave her alone. Go do what you're good at. And he said, Christina, here's what you're good at. Go do that. You're already leaving him alone, so just keep doing what you're doing. So don't worry about him. I'll work on him, okay? But we would be in these coaching meetings, and I mean, he would just rip on me like, Tomas, you got to let her do her thing. And so what he was able to do was divide us to where we were working on the business. She was doing her lane, I was doing my lane, and now we had the ship going in the right direction. And that all happened because we got a coach. And that was early on in our business. That was about a year and a half, 2 years in. Now, within the next year, everything started to change. Because when you read the E-Myth is all about systems. It's all about systems. And when we started implementing those systems, and we were dividing and conquering, and she was doing her thing, and I was doing my thing, guess what? That ship started picking up steam. And have you ever been in business where you feel it picking up steam? Have you ever felt that? Where you get that momentum, the big mo, and now momentum starts turning? Usually, once that momentum starts going, all you got to do is keep going and keep learning and keep growing. That led to me going to John Maxwell. We finally had like money to where I could really invest in myself to do some of the passions I had, which was speaking and coaching. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. I was actually an educational trainer from 2002 to 2010, and I was training teachers. You want to talk about training some tough people? You know, training teachers is tough, right? But I did that, and that led me to the way I speak today. And then I went to John Maxwell in 2014, and again, life change. And I got to my next book. This was the next book. Has anybody ever heard of this? The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. All right. So write this book title down, because I will tell you, this book is radical in teaching you how to grow as a leader. It sets the stage to help you learn how to grow as a leader. No matter where you're at in the organization, it's going to set the stage for you to grow. Now, this book started really, have you ever read a book like convict you and challenge you? Right? Like you open it up, and as you're reading it, you're just like, oh, that one hurt. We call it the chin check. I have a group of, we mastermind together. Anybody ever been a part of a mastermind? It's a group of people come together, they work together, they work on ideas, but the goal is to get better and to learn. So we mastermind, and we call it chin check when the book like just catches you right across the chin, and you're like, all right, I need to learn this. I got to write this down. That quote really got me. That's what this book did. Now, since then, I've read this book 10 times. I've done about 9 masterminds on this book alone. And if we ever want to get to a point where you want to do an 8-week mastermind as a group, you let me know, because that mastermind is life-changing. I just did it with a group of realtors. They never really done personal growth. Like, have y'all heard that term, personal growth? Right? Growing personally, getting better. Well, here's the thing. The business journal, and I brought it because I didn't know if I was going to use it, but I need to show you this. The business journal just came out with an article, the San Antonio Business Journal. And it says here, this was the cover of the business journal. Think about this for a second. It says, learning on the job is not enough. And the whole article goes into talking about that, listen, if you think you're just going to get what you need working and doing the job that you do, that's not the case. That's not the world we live in anymore. You're going to need to start personally growing. So how can we do that? Give me some hand. Well, tell me, how can we personally grow? How can we get better? Because the job's not going to do it. So what can we do? Take classes. What else? Read books. Attend sessions. He's got the 10X planner. He went to Grant Cardone's deal in Miami. Wasn't it in Miami? Yeah. And you heard from some of the best speakers in the world, literally. John Maxwell was one of them. Yep. He was there. Yep. Yeah. What else can you do? Can learn on the job, right? I mean, you can, but you're going to need to go outside the job. Can you go back and get a degree? You could. And the biggest thing that this article is saying is that now companies are pushing to add education as one of their benefits. They're really pushing it because they're seeing that the workforce, if they really want to have the workers that they want, they're going to have to spend the money to get them to come into their business. And they're going to have to do some college tuition credits and help them out in that way. And so for me, when I got to the point when I was able to go to John Maxwell and I got to read this book, it put me on a mission. And my mission was, I have to share this book with as many people as possible. Because this book has changed my life. And every mastermind that I've ever done, everybody always says the same thing. Why did I not know about this book before? We just had to meet so I could tell you about it, right? It was meant to be, right? And so this book really launches the idea of how John learned how to personally grow himself. And it goes through each chapter. Every chapter is a law, okay? Now, fast forward for me, just to wrap up my story. And we went from, remember I told you, how was I feeling in the beginning?
Alone.
I was alone. I was on an island. I felt trapped. I went from feeling alone, being on an island, feeling trapped, to now I've got these big books pouring into me. I go see John Maxwell. I end up going to that 3 times in 14, 15, and 16. And I'm pouring so much into me. My personal growth just takes off to a whole different level. And in the process of that, I start doing these masterminds to help other people start to personally grow. And then in 2015, lo and behold, what happens? We get another business opportunity to buy. Now, I wonder how that came about, right? How did that happen? Now, if I wasn't working on myself, if I wasn't reading and I wasn't digging in and I didn't have a coach, do you think that that opportunity would have come up? Probably not, but I can tell you this much, I wouldn't have been ready even if it did. That's the point that I want to make, is that I would not be where I wouldn't have been able to do it had I not been on this personal growth journey. And it's so important. So you've got to start with this journey. And so that leads me to this idea. I had to grow. I had to grow and develop. And so what does that mean? Well, when you want to grow, you're going to have to grab the law of intentionality. You're going to have to grab the law of intentionality. Now that word is a really interesting word, and the first time I came across that word was when John was writing his book, Intentional Living. Has anybody ever heard of that book? He wrote that book about, 4 or 5 years ago now. And it is a powerful, powerful book about designing your life to live intentionally. Highly recommend that book. But if you're going to grow, you're going to have to grab onto this law of intentionality. And in fact, I'm going to tell you that this law is going to be one of the most critical laws of grabbing hold of being intentional. And I'll talk about that more. You need to remember the law of the mirror. Now, where do you think all these laws come from? The book. Every one of these laws comes from the 15 laws of growth. And for me, these laws were powerful because they helped me get through some tough times. Because even when you have momentum going, trust me, are you going to hit roadblocks? Every business, every job, you're going to hit that ceiling, you're going to hit roadblocks. Then I had to obtain the law of design. The law of design. And that chapter, again, I've read it 9, 10 times. Every time I read that chapter, I think about the E-Myth. Because John Maxwell, guess who he quotes in that chapter? Michael Gerber, who is the author of the E-Myth. And that chapter really opened my mind. Tomas, if you truly want to have the success that you say you want to have, then you better design systems to get you to that. And anybody Gary Vee fans? Anybody listen to Gary Vee or heard of Gary Vee? Right? So Gary Vee, social media guy, does a lot of videos. He cusses a lot. FYI. But one of his videos is he's like, he goes, it's funny. He goes, everybody wants LeBron James' talent, but nobody wants to do the LeBron James effort. Right? You have uphill, like you want to have this uphill success, but you got downhill habits, as John Maxwell says. Right? You have this uphill mentality of success, but you got downhill habits. They're in contradiction. And so if you want to be like LeBron, like Gary Vee says, you have to bleed like LeBron. You've got to put the effort like LeBron did. You're not going to be that if you don't actually put the effort in to do that. So the law of design is all about designing your systems for your business to get what it is you want. And then last but not least, the last one, you have to welcome the law of the rubber band. And this chapter is all about being uncomfortable. Anybody here like to be uncomfortable? Is it fun being uncomfortable? So I'll tell you a little bit about, when we get to that law of the rubber band, that stretching, I'll tell you about my fitness journey because it does connect with this and my business. So now let's break these down. Let's think about this for a second. The law of intentionality. I'm just curious, what do you think that word means to you when you hear that word, intentionality? Yes?
Being proactive rather than reactive.
Did y'all hear that? Proactive versus reactive. Love it. Anybody else want to add to that?
Purpose.
Who?
Do something with purpose.
My man, purpose, right? Which goes to that, right? Because if you're going to be proactive, you have a reason why you're doing it, but you got to have a purpose. I love that. So here's what I learned about my business when I started it. When you start a business, you tend to throw a lot of spaghetti on the wall. Anybody been there? It's like you try to do it all. Anybody try to do it all? You want to try to be all things to all people. You want to go to every ribbon cutting. You want to help out everybody that you could possibly help out. But I was being very reactive and just kind of like running and chasing my own tail and not being very proactive and purposeful. And so I had to realize what John talks about in this book is that growth, your growth, is not going to magically happen. Anybody here have a green thumb? You can plant stuff and you can grow it. Who here has a green? No, raise your hand if you can grow. Who can grow stuff? Ooh, that's awesome. Let me tell you how bad and how awful I am at growing, like my wife and I. So we went and bought peppers. We wanted to grow green peppers. We were really excited about growing these green peppers. And you know when they sell them to you, they come in the little carton. You know that little carton that they come in? And so we were just excited. We dug a hole. We took the carton. We put it in the hole. We covered them up perfectly. We watered them. Right? I mean, we felt like we did this right. I mean, did I make a mistake? Right? And then my friend looked at me and she was just like, so you put the carton in the dirt? I said, well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. It looks like it's biodegradable. It just made sense to me, right? I was like, maybe it has some special food in it that I didn't know about, right? Anyways, needless to say, like if you want something to grow, you're going to have to be intentional. I'll say that again. If you want to be a better communicator, you're going to have to be intentional. If you want to be a better motivator, you're going to have to be intentional. And what John happened in the book, John meets a guy, his name was Kurt, and Kurt said, John, do you have a growth plan? John's like, growth plan? What's a growth plan? I've never heard of it. He started asking all his friends, hey, do you have a growth plan? Hey, do you have a... Nobody had a growth plan. He didn't know what he was talking about. He went back to Kurt. He said, Kurt, what is a growth plan? He said, where you intentionally study and learn what you want to get better at. That's a growth plan. And he was like, well, that sounds fantastic. I need a growth plan. Kurt said it's $795. Right? Now, this was in the 70s. 1970s, $795. He was a preacher. It took him, I think in the book, it took him 6 months to save up the money because they didn't have credit cards. He couldn't just buy it. He had to save up the money, get the growth plan. He gets the growth plan, and it's literally how to grow in 4 areas. And he starts being intentional. And from that day until today, if you know John Maxwell, he's literally been intentional with everything that he does. Everything that he does. And then it's interesting because sometimes we have this idea that we feel like, well, I'm just gonna, it's on-the-job training, right? It's this idea of like on-the-job training, I'll figure it out. Now, what do we know about I'll figure it out? What do we know about that learning? Say again? It never happens. Well, it can, but it just may take so long that you're just like, wow, that didn't really work out for me, But what else do we know about accidental growth? Like just, I'm just gonna, just figure it out and I'll figure it out at some point.
Lots of pitfalls.
Lots of pitfalls. It's expensive, right? So this is the thing about intentionality. When you're intentional, you can start casting out and looking ahead of you, and you can start figuring out, where do I need to grow? What do I need to be better at, right? Or a lot of people say, John Maxwell's one of them, is double down on your strengths. What are you good at, right? What are you really, really good at? Start focusing on that and harnessing how you can be better in those areas. And so the law of intentionality ends with this. He talks about the law of diminishing intent. And this, for me, was like, remember I told you what I call it when you get hit in the chin? It's like the knockout uppercut at 9 rounds, right? It's just, I just got hit. The definition is so powerful. The law of diminishing intent states that the longer that you wait to do something that you should do, right? The longer you wait to do something that you should do, the greater the odds that you'll never actually do it. Which goes right back to being intentional. And so for me, when I heard that, I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, Tomas, you keep talking about you want to write a book, you want to write a book, you want to write a book. Tomas, when's the last time that you sat down to write a chapter? It made me realize that if I am not going to intentionally dive into it, do I really want to do it? Do I really want to do it? And so that was powerful for me. So the law of intentionality, you got to grab hold of this law and be purposeful, and you need to have a vision and where you want to go and what you want to work on. The next one, the law of the mirror. Now this law was really interesting because what this law starts breaking down is, I want you to imagine if you were standing in front of the mirror, right? You're getting ready for work. You're standing in front of the mirror. You're all dressed up. You're looking at the mirror. Now, you're sitting there and you're staring at yourself. Has anybody ever had a negative thought? Now, some of y'all giggled when I said that, right? Right? So John opens up this chapter by saying, he literally says, listen, everyone has seeds of success inside them. And what do we call that? It's a word that starts with a P that some people, it's potential, right? We've got these seeds of success inside of us, and everyone always says, oh, you have so much potential. Oh, you've got so much potential. Did anybody get tired of hearing that growing up? You've got so much potential. And then you're like, what does that mean?
You could really be somebody.
You could really be somebody, yes. Okay, well, why don't you help me be somebody, right? Like, I need your help, right? But this is the law of the mirror in one idea, is that John says when you look at yourself, you have to see value in yourself to add value to yourself. Now think about what I just said there. It's powerful. If you're looking in the mirror and you don't see value in yourself, are you going to want to add value to yourself? You're not going to want to add value, right? So this chapter really, it challenged me in a lot of ways to really think about a lot of different things. Number one is self-talk. Anybody have that self-talk, you know, that's on your shoulder, and they like to say really negative things to you, right? Oh, you know what, Helotes, they're not gonna like you, Tomas. You're talking about leadership. Come on, dude. Why are you going to go talk about leadership again? You don't need to do this. You're not ready. Are you really the leader that you think you are? Anybody have that self-talk ever? Right? We all have that self-talk. Now, what I want you to do is think of the law of the mirror. Because when you look in the mirror, what I need you to do is I need you to stop and first do what? You need to see value in what's there in front of you and know that you have value. Because everybody in this room, I'm going to give you a quote that's going to help you. All right. I'm going to give you a quote that's going to help you, and it's helped me in so many ways. Has anybody ever heard of the Ferrari kid? The guy that drives the Ferraris for kids that have cancer? And they pick them up in the Ferrari, they drive them around town, and they take them on shopping sprees. Well, Manny is someone that I know, and he does some amazing things here in the city. Manny told me one day, he said, Tomas, because I was asking him, like, what do I talk about when I speak? Right? And he looked at me and he goes, Tomas, what's ordinary to you is extraordinary to others. And I literally looked at him and I was like, hold on, let me get my journal, hold on. I started writing it down. I said, say that again. And so what I want to share with everybody in this room, listen to me. If you're not seeing value, I want you to know there's something you know that you think is just ordinary. Everybody knows it. But trust me, if you shared it with somebody, they would go, who taught you that? Where did you hear that? It would be extraordinary to them. So don't look in that mirror any longer and doubt who you are or whose you are. You got to look in that mirror and say, you know what? I have value and I have something to offer and to give back. But then I always relate it to like a cup, right? Now, whenever I teach people, I say, look, like learning is like a cup. You start learning and you start learning and you start growing and you start learning and you start learning and you start learning. What happens? What's going to happen? It's going to overflow. And then what do you do as it overflows? You start sharing it. It starts pouring out on other people. You're like, oops, sorry, I just told you about the 15 laws of growth. Oops, sorry. All right, law of the rubber band, my bad. You know, you can't help but share it because you're just putting so much in, it starts to come out. And people start to, after a while, people start looking at you and you're like, man, what's going on in your life? Like, what are you doing? What are you learning? Where did you see all of this? And then you get the opportunity to share, but then the opposite is true. I want you to imagine you pour it all out, and now guess what? Your cup is now empty. Because here's the thing about personal growth. There is no finish line. Nike's famous ad, I have a whole Mindset Monday on it. We get to learn to the day we just keel over. There's no stopping. That's the beauty of personal development. That's the beauty of the law of the mirror, is every day you can look in that mirror and say, I have value, and you know what? I can add value. I can add value to myself, which then I can turn around and add value to others. So the law of the mirror, that one helped me big time. The next one, obtain the law of design. Now you remember, Michael Gerber talks about this in this book. And his quote is, now think about this quote for a second. He says, systems permit ordinary people to achieve extraordinary, predictable results. Systems take ordinary people and allow them to achieve extraordinary, predictable results. Now, have you ever seen somebody in business that is extraordinary, but they have no systems and nothing seems to work for them? Like nothing. I saw that. Right? It's like they've got, like, they're so smart, they know all the answers, they have all the things, they've got it all figured out, but because they don't have any systems, nothing works. It's like they keep beating their head against the wall. There's no system, no system, no system. But if you obtain this law, ordinary people, I'm talking ordinary, just someone with a plan that says, I'm going to create a system, and this system is going to produce X, and they do it steady Eddie, consistently and persistently. And the next thing you know, they've done something extraordinary. Now, for me, this just happened. This just recently happened. I want to show you something. I'm a big journal person. Anybody else a journal person, like journals? I love journals. And I have about, I don't know, it's got to be like 25, 30 of these at my house, okay? And I keep filling them up. Now, here's what I did. I went and tracked. Anybody run? Anybody like to run? Runners? Okay. All right, this may not work, but I'm going to go through it anyways. You're doing the... That's right. Well, this is going to kind of go over the 0.5K, but here's what I want to share with you. I started creating a system to help me with my fitness. And it's really weird, but I'm going to share it with you, okay? And if it's weird to you, I apologize, but I think it's really important because I think if you want something, you need to develop a system. And so here's what I do. When I get home, I get all my stuff put away, and I actually go and put on my workout clothes for the next day. I know some of y'all are like, that's weird, Tom. I told you it was weird. I told you. Now, I literally put on my workout clothes. I have my workout clothes on, and I will set my bag. I will completely make my gym bag. I'll have my clothes set out. I have my clothes picked out. I'll have everything in my bag. I put it in my car. I actually shake my protein shake, put it in the fridge. I have everything ready so that when I walk out of my house in the morning, I literally just eat, grab my stuff, go to the restroom, and I'm in my car and I'm out. And I do this on the days that I work out. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it's a system that I've designed. And then every weekend, guess what I do? I run. And I run on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I have this system every time. I have a buddy. We run before boxing. We run 4.5 miles. And then we go box for an hour. And we do this every Tuesday, every Thursday, and then we run every weekend. Now, that system has allowed me to do something extraordinary. I've been doing this now for about 2 years. Now, the extraordinary thing is, again, going back to your 0.5K, this should be really interesting. But what we did is I actually ran a half marathon on a Saturday 2 weeks ago. And then on a Sunday, we ran another half marathon. Back to back. One day, Saturday, I ran a half marathon. The next day, Sunday, we woke up and I ran a half marathon. Now, how does that happen? Did I just wake up and start running? I'm not a natural runner. I'm really slow. Okay? I'm not that fast. But here's the thing. I developed the system and I just stuck to the system. And this just shows you August 2016. I have my run totals. Are you ready? In August 2016, I ran one run. I ran 2 miles in August 2016. Okay? Does that sound extraordinary? Does that sound amazing? Hey, I tried. I did one. I was prepared for the 0.5K. I was prepared, right? Now, look at 2017. Are you ready? In 2017, in August, I ran 20 times, and I ran 56 miles. Now, August 18, this is when it gets crazy. Are you ready? I ran 21 runs. This is all by Nike. I use a Nike app for this. I ran 21 runs, and I ran 77 miles. Okay? Now, what did I tell you in the beginning? Could I run 77 miles in 2016? Would that have been a good idea? That would have been really, really stupid. So don't try to go run 77 miles this next month. Now, lastly, I want to share this with you. Again, I made a system. In 2019, last August, I had 19 runs. I ran 117 miles in 1 month. That all was developed by creating a system and just sticking to the system. I'm an ordinary runner. I'm not extraordinary. I'm not out of this world. I don't run fast. My friends make fun of me. It's like, can you run faster? Why are you walking? I'm like, no, I'm running. Trust me. I'm just not running as fast as you are, right? But I want to share that with you. If you obtain this law of design, powerful things can happen. Does this work in business? Does this work in business? Big time. What about in our personal life, in our personal finances? Does this work in our personal finances? Does this work in our married life? Does this work on having a system for how you want to do your date nights, or having a system for how you want to, whatever it is, develop the system so that you can really build what it is that you want. All right. Sorry, I went a little long on that one, but I could feel that I really needed to share that. The law of the design. Last but not least, this one is all about the rubber band. Now, this is a tough one, Because you know this law is about being uncomfortable. Anybody here like to be uncomfortable? Right? If I said, hey, I think I want to challenge everybody here to run 3 miles tomorrow. Anybody up for that? Like, I love that. She's like, no, nope, I'm good. So do you automatically feel a little uncomfortable by that challenge? Feels a little uncomfortable, right? Now, what if I said, hey, you're just going to do a 0.5K? Everybody feel good about that? Yeah, you feel good about that. Because here's the deal. Being uncomfortable is relative. See, your level of comfort and my level of comfort are totally different. Meaning what makes me uncomfortable may not make you uncomfortable, and what makes you uncomfortable may not make me uncomfortable. It's all what you want to strive for. It's all what you want to do. But here's the thing about a rubber band. The thing about a rubber band, it's useless unless what? Unless you stretch it, a rubber band has no purpose. Now think about what I just said there. Think about what I just said there. Unless it's stretched, it serves no purpose. Now, here's where I'm gonna challenge you. You ready? Now, think about your life. I want you to think about the last time you were stretched. Meaning you had to do something, but you really didn't want to do it, but it stretched you. Anybody ever been there? Anybody ever been stretched? Right? Was it uncomfortable? But did you learn something from it? Did you learn from that experience? You see, that's the power of the law of the rubber band. When you get stretched is where you really find what you are, all that potential, all that's been put inside of you, you start to find what you're really capable of. But if you don't stretch yourself, you're like a rubber band laying on a desk. Now hear that, right? Hear that. If you don't stretch yourself, if you don't force yourself to be uncomfortable, you're like a rubber band laying on the desk. You never get to touch the boundaries of what is capable in your life. And so that really challenged me because I don't always like to be uncomfortable. I don't always like to run half marathons. Do you think half marathons are fun? Anybody ever run a half marathon? Yeah, right? I mean, it's not like you don't wake up and go, yeah, another half marathon, here we go. You know what I mean? No, you're just like, okay, I know it's going to be a little painful for a little bit, but I'm going to get through this, all right? I'm going to get through it. And at some point, I'm going to walk and I'm going to eat a snack and have some juice. You know, like back in the day, like when you're a kid, got them in my little snack bag on my vest. But the reality is, you have to stretch yourself. And this is part of growing as a leader. Part of this, it's all growing as a leader. Now, last quote here. This is from President John F. Kennedy. Conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. And the last thing I want to touch on here, if you want to grow, if you truly want to grow, this is where, again, it might get a little uncomfortable, right? But the reality is, if you really want to grow, there may be some people that you might have to stop hanging out with. Okay? There may be some people that you might have to step away from because they're not on the growth plan. Matter of fact, they don't want to even know about your growth plan, right? Matter of fact, they could care less about your growth plan. And so the thing is that if you're going to conform, if you're just going to be like everybody else, if you're just going to say, you know what, I don't need to be intentional. I don't need to do that. If you're going to say, you know what, this law of the mirror, value in myself, whatever. I'll add value when I can find a way to add value. And then if you just don't have a plan, if you don't have a design, if you're not designing something to help you, then you're conforming. And then last but not least, if you're not stretching, if you're not going to be that law of the rubber band, you're just going to end up in this position of being the rubber band on the desk. So don't conform. Grow. And I have some ways to help you grow. Are you ready? I have some ways to help you. Every Monday I do Mindset Monday. It's a short video, 2 to 3 minutes. Has anybody ever seen one of my videos? Mindset Monday? I have it on everything. It's on Instagram. It's literally everywhere. But it's a short video You can subscribe to my YouTube. It's TM3 Impact. It's really, really cool. And then TM with the number 3.com. And then I also have a podcast. I've gotten to interview some really cool people. You can see that on, you see my podcast online. You can also, if you sign up on my website, you'll automatically get the email for the Mindset Monday. It'll pop up in your email. You just click it and you can watch it. And last but not least, there's one more way that I want to share with you is that because I'm a John Maxwell speaker, we have a simulcast coming up. This is called Live to Lead. And if you want to grow and you want to dive into this, Live to Lead is a great way to do it. Anybody ever heard of Rachel Hollis? Rachel Hollis, Girl Wash Your Face. Oh my gosh. She's going to be one of the speakers. And we also have John. We also have Angela. And I think her name is Arindis. She is the retail president for Apple. And then you have Marcus Buckingham, global researcher, thought leader. And if you know Dave Ramsey, one of his speakers is Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan is going to be speaking. Now, I need to help you understand what a simulcast is. Rachel Hollis will not be at Topgolf. Let me just help you, okay? She is an international speaker, and she comes with an international price. And so we are simulcasting this, meaning this will be played, and then we're going to be showing it on the screens here at Topgolf. It'll be a lot of fun. It's on October 25th. It's on a Friday morning. Trust me, you can get off. We'd love for you to come. And with that, I went over, and I apologize. I want to just open it up for Q&A, ideas, thoughts, anything that came, maybe something that was brought to your awareness that you said, I want to share this. Go. I can. Yeah. Yeah.
How long have you been doing the podcast?
The podcast, Gabe, when did we start the podcast? What's that? Last year, yeah. Yeah. So it's been about a year. We've, 20 episodes? Almost 30 episodes that we've done. Yeah. And I love podcasts. I love it. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I also have a studio, so if you love that stuff and you want to do your own, come talk to me. I can teach you. Gabe and I can show you how to set it all up, how to do it. It's awesome. Any other questions? Yes.
So as intentional leaders,
Yeah.
you mentioned 3 books.
Yeah.
Which one would you so for us,
Ooh.
for myself, in what order would you read them?
Oh, that's a great question. So it really depends on where you're at in terms of your, like a bit. You own your own business? Yes. E-Myth. Okay, I would read that one first. Because what kind of business do you have? You don't mind me asking?
An art gallery.
Art gallery, yes. So I would read the E-Myth. Okay? Because to me, I think the E-Myth is going to start opening your mind to this idea, because sometimes as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we can be the technician. Right? Do you paint? Do you do art? No. Okay. All right. Okay. I was sweating that one for a second. I wanted to make sure, because I asked that for a reason, and you'll figure it out in the book. Because the idea of the book is you're following the story of a young lady that starts a bakery because she's a baker. Right? So when you read, I would start with that book. Great question. Second one is 15 Laws. And I would say, let's get a mastermind and start a mastermind. Find some people that want to do that. Reach out to me. Trust me, it's a game changer. I typically do 3 or 4 masterminds. I'm doing one right now. I just wrapped up 2. I did a mastermind in Kerrville, and we use Zoom. Like Zoom, I've never done Zoom before. Zoom is awesome. I learned something. So I would say, 15 Laws after that. Yep. And then the third book was, remind me.
360 leaders.
Oh yeah, 360-degree leader. That's a good one too. But I would read that last after those other 2. Yes.
I'm just curious, like, for someone who's never used a life coach, and I'm always afraid to call one because I'm worried they're going to reel me in and then it's going to be these dollar signs everywhere.
Yeah.
What is, like, the average price?
Yeah.
People charge differently, but how do you pay for one?
That's a great question. She said, so how does the whole life coaching, business coaching, how does that all work, price ranges? And so really what I would look at is the John Maxwell model is really interesting, because you have to understand that, life coaching and business coaching are a little different, right? And so that paradigm is a little shift in itself, right? But then there is consulting and coaching. Now let me break that down, right? So like a consultant, right? A consultant's gonna say, hey, okay, what do you wanna do? Okay, I'm gonna tell you the 5 things that you need to do now. Go do those things and then come back to me, right? They're gonna tell you and consult with you what to do. A coach is gonna ask questions, is going to pull out of you what it is that you know that you need to do. And that's the John Maxwell coaching method, is inquiry-based coaching. So when I meet with my clients, I ask a lot of questions, and we dig, and then we find a rabbit hole, and then it's like, we got to go down that rabbit hole. What you just said, we got to talk about that. Let's go deeper. And so it becomes this balance of business, personal, but really the whole idea is your personal is your business, and your business is personal. It all goes together. So I look at the whole piece, and then it's a lot of questions. But that's the differentiating factor. Now, pricing, it's all over the board. I mean, I've seen people charge $1,000 an hour, and I've seen people charge $200 an hour. It really is just, it's a spectrum. And the other thing is finding someone that you feel like that can relate to what you're doing and that is able to help you, right? So that doesn't fully answer, but it gives you a spectrum. Yeah.
So it's hourly.
Typically it's hourly, or it's a package, or packages. A lot of people will do packages. They'll save X amount a month, so it just depends on kind of how you want to set it up with them. Well, I really appreciate the time. Glenn, Rachel, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This was a pleasure. You guys have a wonderful week, and hopefully I'll see you again.